What's up, boxing fans? I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of 5/21. Not a whole lot of action last week. There were a few fights here and there that I'll talk about, but literally as I was setting up here, getting ready to shoot, they were just showing PBC on Fox Sports 1, I think it was, and man, there was a sick knockout. Murat Gassiev, he's a stablemate of Gennady Golovkin's up there in Big Bear, trained by Abel Sanchez, just iced this dude with a left hook. It was a disgusting left hook. Jordan Shamel is, I think, the guy's name. He only had one loss coming into this fight. It was a cruiserweight bout. Man, this Murat Gassiev, he is one to watch. Doesn't really have the best skills, not the most athletic guy, but he gets leverage on that left hook. Abel Sanchez trains his fighters to punch hard. Anyway, just had to get that out because I just saw that in the other room. Gassiev is now 23-0 with 17 KOs. And he's the mandatory for a cruiserweight title fight happening this weekend that I'll talk about in a few minutes. Before I get to all that, let's talk about some news and notes. So everybody's talking about the canceled fight between Deontay Wilder and Alexander Povetkin. And there's some back and forth on Twitter. Some of you guys have been kind of hashing it out with me because of my stance on this thing. Okay, look, let's just set the record straight on exactly what happened. VADA, Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, did the testing for this fight because the WBC has a mandate now with all their title fights. They're going to use VADA testing, which I think is great. It makes the WBC's title more relevant than every other sanctioning organization's title in boxing. You can quote me on that. Even though I'm highly, highly critical of the WBC and some of the shenanigans they've pulled in recent years, they're getting it right with this one. Now, Wilder and his team didn't really seem to want to fight Povetkin, okay? This fight has been delayed for over a year and a half now. I think Povetkin has been a mandatory for going on 2 years for Wilder. So at least a year and a half. But finally they agreed to it, and Povetkin's people won the purse bid. The fight was going to be over there in Russia. There's been some drug testing issues. A lot of people have been popping over there in Russia in recent times, right? So Wilder and his team, even though Heyman and PBC don't ever really go with VADA, they were glad to go with him this time. They usually go with USADA, who's shit. They're compromised. But with VADA, they did, I think, 3 tests with Povetkin in early April. All 3 times Povetkin passed. They did another test at the very end of April. I want to say it was like April 27th or something. And Povetkin popped for meldonium, which is a drug that up until this year was not considered a banned substance. And there's still some controversy about WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, adding it to the banned substances list. The drug is produced, I think, in Latvia or somewhere over there in Eastern Europe. And a lot of athletes over there use it. Basically what it does is it helps your blood circulate, increases your blood flow, which helps your stamina, which helps your recovery, which are very, very important things in boxing. Of course, it's important in other sports. I think, if you play any kind of endurance sport, this would be a drug that would help you. Now, there was recently a case, and I've talked about this, Francisco Vargas tested positive for clenbuterol in Mexico with VADA. And that fight's still going ahead, his fight with Vargas-Salido. So there's a lot of people that are pissed off saying, hey, why is that fight going forward? This fight with Povetkin was canceled. Guys, it's 2 totally different things. With the Francisco Vargas deal, clenbuterol, which there's a huge precedent of that particular chemical or whatever technical term it is, clenbuterol, being found in contaminated beef, specific to beef, down there in Mexico. Long story short, they gave Vargas the opportunity to test again. He tested again and was clean. Ultimately, what VADA does is they administer the tests, they report the results. It is up to the State Athletic Commission or the National Athletic Commission, wherever the fight's going to be held, and the 2 fighter camps to work out if they want to do it, and the sanctioning body. It's not up to VADA. VADA just performs the tests. In that situation, with the precedent of clenbuterol in the contaminated meat, with the ability for Vargas to test again and tested clean, they ultimately decided to go forward with that fight. The California State Athletic Commission decided it was okay to continue with that fight. Now, the fight with Povetkin and Wilder. Povetkin was positive with the A sample. Remember, there's an A sample and a B sample. Povetkin didn't even ask VADA to test or look at his B sample. Didn't even ask. Now think about this. If you were clean and you were damn sure of it, would you not demand that the B sample be tested? They keep the B sample. They keep both samples for 5 years. So they have that B sample. If Povetkin and his guys thought he was clean, I would be knocking on the door, making phone calls saying, test the B sample. And hey, Povetkin said that, yes, I was taking the drug last year when it was legal, but I stopped taking it once WADA added it to the banned substances list. That doesn't hold water, because if that was true, how did he test clean early in the month of April 3 times? Not just once, it's not some freak thing, but 3 times, and then late in the month test positive. Looks really, really shady. On top of that, again, he didn't ask for the B sample to be tested. He didn't ask to be retested in general. He just basically said, we're going to go to court and sue you, which they really have no case. If they try to sue VADA or the WBC or Deontay Wilder's people, they're not going to get any money because they're in the wrong here. Now, look, with Alexander Povetkin, his last 6 fights have been in Russia, going back, I think, over 3 years. He lost one of those fights to Vladimir Klitschko. He survived, I think, 4 or 5 knockdowns, but he went to the final bell. But other than that fight, he's 5-0 with 5 knockouts. His KO ratio in those 6 fights in Russia, well, if you minus the one fight that he lost to Vlad, his KO ratio is 100%. Before that, he was 24-0 with 17 knockouts, KO ratio of 70%. How many times have we seen an athlete's power, stamina increase late in their career, and then we find out that they're doing something? Now look, after the Klitschko loss, he's had 4 straight knockouts. Povetkin has. 2 of those knockouts came in the late rounds. I want to say like the 9th, 10th round. When you're KOing guys late in a fight like that, look, man, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a motherfucking duck. Okay? There's too much suspicion around this guy who doesn't want to leave Russia, whose physique does look different the last couple years than it looked the first few years of his career. He looked noticeably different with Klitschko. And I gotta say, looking back, thinking about how Vladimir Klitschko went over there to Russia before VADA testing was going on, took him on in Russia. I'm not saying, I can't say for sure Povetkin was dirty, but if he's been pulling this kind of stuff, and Klitschko went over there and dominated him, shut him out 12 rounds to 0, that was a god-awful, ugly fight to watch. But it is an impressive thing that Vladimir Klitschko went over there and did that. It looks even more impressive now. As it stands, the fight is technically, per the WBC, postponed. Guys, I don't think this fight's ever going to happen. I think Povetkin's people are going to try to go to court. There's absolutely no precedent for it. They're not going to win a fucking dime. Povetkin's on the shelf. I think ultimately the WBC is going to take him off his mandatory status or strip him of his title or something, and Wilder is going to go on and, Povetkin doesn't have a title. They're going to strip him of his mandatory status, and Wilder is going to go on and fight somebody else. So other than that, related to the Canelo-Golovkin situation, there's a lot of shit going around on social media with I saw some news story where, they're going to take, both guys are going to take 2 or 3 interim fights and blah, blah, blah. Guys, don't believe in any of this shit. I told you. Look at my video I did on this, okay? Golden Boy Promotions, K2 Promotions are not negotiating this fight through the media. They're not going to do what Floyd Mayweather and Bob Arum did for the past 5, 6 years before Pacquiao and Mayweather fought last year. They're not going to do that. So you guys you're giving lazy, quote unquote, journalists clicks. These guys are lazy. They're going for clickbait. They're posting some rumor they heard from their best friend's cousin's uncle's dog's babysitter, right? Quit clicking on this shit and quit sharing it. Quit retweeting it. Unless you hear it from Golden Boy, K2, or somebody directly linked to those camps, okay, that knows these guys on a first name basis, that can tell you, don't believe anything you hear, okay? It's that simple. And real quick, with the 3 interim fights before they fight thing, Canelo Alvarez is a pay-per-view fighter. That means he fights twice a year. He fights in May, he fights in September. If he was to take 3 more interim fights before facing Golovkin, that would mean the Canelo-Golovkin fight ain't happening until 2019. No, wait, 2018. Because he's got one in September and then 2 next year, right? Guys, the people involved in this know the fight can't wait that long. They know the expiration date of this fight is next year. And I can tell you that K2, specifically Tom Loeffler, he ain't playing those games. I could see a deal where 1 interim fight more or something. I could see some kind of deal being worked out like that. But there is no way in hell Tom Loeffler and Team Golovkin are going to sit around and wait for Canelo. They want the freaking belt. That's all they want. So all this shit you're hearing about 2 or 3 interim fights before Canelo-Golovkin happens, bullshit. Ain't happening. Quit spreading these rumors, please. Lastly, more rumors. With this Mayweather-McGregor shit, I still am seeing people that I respect report on this shit as if it's a real news story. Ladies and gentlemen, Floyd Mayweather is a horribly insecure little man. Very, very insecure. And all this talk about Conor McGregor started the fight week when Canelo Con was happening. When I went up there to Vegas, everyone started seeing tweets and news blurbs and shit from Mayweather and from Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is basically MMA's version of Mayweather. Dude lost his last fight. He made some comment this week about how he runs boxing. He doesn't even run his own freaking sport. He got dominated by a guy who, Nate Diaz, a guy who was considered a journeyman kind of fighter in that sport, doesn't have very good boxing skills. And that dude outboxed Conor McGregor before tackling him or, whatever they do. But the fact that the thought that Conor McGregor would be competitive with Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match is ridiculous. And Floyd ain't going into a cage and doing an MMA match. He has no experience with wrestling. So please stop talking about this shit again. You're making lazy journalists, you're making 25-year-old journalists who are going for clickbait famous. Stop doing it. Now, let's talk about last week's action. So last Friday, the 13th, in Las Vegas on Showtime, there was a Showbox card. This was a TNT promotion. Floyd Mayweather promoted it. And Andrew Tabiti got a unanimous decision win over Keith Tapia. He's now 13-0 with 11 KOs. This is a cruiserweight fight. Both of the headliners were cruiserweight fights. This is a pretty ugly fight. A lot of holding, a lot of nastiness. The referee was heavily involved in this fight. But as ugly as this fight was, it wasn't nearly as bad as the other fight, the co-feature, where Michael Hunter scored a unanimous decision win over Isaiah Thomas. Hunter is now 12-0 with 8 knockouts. So you got these two cruiserweights, undefeated, these guys both won. Why not have them face each other next? Let's have those two, maybe their styles will work out together better than in these two fights, because they weren't very fan-friendly. For Isaiah Thomas, man, I don't know. Dude just looked like he didn't want to be there. He was running the entire night, not throwing any punches. And he's from Detroit, named after the Detroit Pistons bad boys point guard, Isaiah Thomas, that I grew up idolizing. He was my favorite player when I was a kid. And Isaiah Thomas was like 6 feet, 6'1", one of the smallest guys in the league at the time. But he had this toughness, this tenacity about him. And Isaiah Thomas, the boxer, just did not inherit that from his namesake. He looked very, very flat in this fight. But these two guys who won, Tabiti and Hunter, again, let's see them fight each other. You know, there's some talent in the cruiserweight division. I always talk about this. But these guys, they just don't fight each other. And we need more unification. We need more of these undefeated prospects to face each other. But Saturday the 14th, there was a few cards around the world. I talked about the card in China where Rex So, a 115-pounder prospect out of China, he improved to 18-0 with a 4th-round TKO. And Japanese middleweight, Ryota Murata, he improved to 9-0 with a TKO 4. So both of those guys got W's against really, nondescript opponents. In Cardiff, Wales, Lee Haskins defended his IBF bantamweight title with a unanimous decision over Ivan Morales. And Haskins looked pretty good, man. He really, really did. Good win for him. He defended that title. That's another division where I would love to see some unification. We need some. Here in the United States, in Studio City, which is a suburb of Los Angeles here, there was a bunch of fights on a card, a small card up there in Studio City. Toka Khan Clay, featherweight prospect. Esquiva Falco, the Brazilian middleweight prospect, one of the two Falco brothers. Saul Rodriguez, really good-looking lightweight prospect, local guy from this area. And Andy Ruiz Jr., the big blubber heavyweight, they all won to stay undefeated. So all 4 of those prospects kind of continued marching forward. Look, with Andy Ruiz, the heavyweight fighter, he weighed in, I want to say he had his weight under 250, which is good for him. But he really should be in the 220s, 230s at most. And he's another guy with some skills, a real fighter's mentality, some craft, some hand speed for a heavyweight. And he throws a lot of punches, which is something you don't see a lot in the heavyweight division. But he doesn't have the eraser. So for him to win fights at the higher level, he's going to have to go late in the fights and win decisions. That's how he's going to beat bigger heavyweights if he's going to do it. And weighing 250 pounds when you're not that tall, having a gut and looking, blubbery, ain't going to get it done. So I don't see anything there to believe in. But these other 3 prospects, particularly Saul Rodriguez, he looked really, really good. And he's a guy to keep an eye on. So we'll see what he does next. But that was it for last week's action. There wasn't a whole lot going on. Let's talk about what's coming up this week. So I just talked about the PBC on Fox Sports 1 card that's going on right now as I'm filming this Tuesday night, where cruiserweight Murat Gassiev just scored a 1st-round knockout over, I think it was Jordan Schmell, who was a pretty good amateur, a pretty good American amateur, won a lot of Golden Gloves tournaments in Michigan. He was from Michigan. So he came into this fight, knowing he had to box. Gassiev is known to have a lot of power. And for the first 2 minutes and 50 seconds of the fight, Gassiev was being outboxed. He was being beat to the punch. But one thing I noticed about Schmell, he was keeping his chin up, fighting very, very amateur style. Very amateur style. And he got caught in the ropes at the very end of the round, and Gassiev came over on the left hook, and he turned over on it and put his freaking butt into it. It was a textbook professional boxing left hook, the way it's supposed to be thrown. And man, dude's head snapped back, immediately collapsed. He was on the canvas for several minutes. It was a brutal, brutal knockout. Right up there with the Canelo Khan type of knockout. So absolutely a knockout of the year candidate. Because Canelo Khan was a much higher profile fight, that obviously is the leading candidate. But I have to put this, number 2, right behind it. Absolutely brutal knockout. Look it up on YouTube or something if you didn't get to see it. Maybe PBC's YouTube page. They actually have a pretty good YouTube page. Maybe they'll post a little highlight reel or something of that. But this Friday, here in the Los Angeles area in Southern California, there's actually a few small little cards here. There's one in Ontario, one in Montebello, one in Indio, and there's a bunch of prospects and stuff fighting on these cards. I think several of them are going to be streamed. I'll find out some more information about that, and if there are streams to those fights, I'll tweet them out. I'll post them below on the comment section in this video. But this Saturday in New Zealand, we still got some heavyweight action this weekend. Joseph Parker, undefeated prospect, who really looks to be, you know, I don't want to say the big challenge for Anthony Joshua in the next couple of years, but he might be that guy. That's going to be like maybe a rivalry brewing here, because he's the best undefeated prospect not named Anthony Joshua right now in the heavyweight division. He's going up against Carlos Takam. This is going to be Joseph Parker's biggest test so far as a professional boxer. So I'm really interested in this fight. It's in New Zealand, which is where Parker's been fighting pretty much exclusively. He's obviously building a brand there and a fan base. At some point, though, when he wants to step it up, and I've said this before, he's going to have to leave. He's going to have to start fighting over in America, at least over in Europe, and start facing bigger, more broader competition. But Carlos Takam, he's been in there with top guys, and he's really fought competitively with everybody. He was brutally knocked out late in a fight by Alexander-Povetkin recently. But other than that, you know, he's been pretty competitive. And he's a quality journeyman, fringe contender level heavyweight. So if Parker can look good against him, that's a big statement. Over in Moscow, Denis Lebedev is unifying titles with Victor Emilio Ramirez of Argentina. Lebedev is obviously from Russia. So this fight's still happening. We know that you know, Wilder-Povetkin was canceled, but this fight's still happening, and this is a important fight. I've talked about unification in the cruiserweight division. Badly needed. This is unifying the WBA and IBF titles. So style-wise, this fight is probably going to be ugly. I don't know. I have a feeling it could get ugly, but I lean toward the Russian, obviously, in this fight. And, you know, if he becomes the unified titleist in the division, it makes a big statement. And Gassiev, who just won earlier tonight, is now the mandatory for the winner of this fight, for one of the titles. I'm not sure which one. But that would be an interesting matchup, particularly if it can be brought here to the United States. In London, speaking of heavyweights, David Haye is having his second fight of the year. He fought once in January after being out of the ring for a while, for years. He's trying to get active again. So let's see what he can do. He's not fighting anybody worth talking about, but it'll be interesting to see, you know, he's getting busy. David Haye was never a guy who was very busy, right? But he's, you know, this is his second fight already this year, so that's good for him. Let's see if he can keep on rolling, work his way into a title fight. And then at the Cosmopolitan in Vegas, the Charlo brothers are fighting. This is a PBC card. I believe it's PBC on Showtime again. Jermell Charlo is fighting for the vacant WBC 154-pound title. And I don't really know anything about his opponent. Jermall Charlo is defending his IBF title, and he's fighting Austin Trout. So that'll be an interesting matchup. I think, again, style-wise, this probably isn't going to be a very good fight. It's probably going to go all 12. I don't see a lot of punches being thrown in this fight, but say what you will about Austin Trout, he's a proven professional. He's fought elite-level opposition. So he, you know, if Jermall Charlo, who I think most people consider to be the better of the two Charlo brothers, if he can dominate Austin Trout, that's a big statement. The main event of this card, Irizlandi Lara, Vanes Martirosyan 2, the rematch, the fight to save boxing. These guys fought once already. It wasn't a very good fight. You know, I've never liked Irizlandi Lara's style. He's all sizzle, no steak, if you know what I mean. With Vanes Martirosyan, every time he steps up, he loses. Great amateur fighter, great gym fighter, great guy that you want in your gym training with your prospects, you know, sparring with your prospects and stuff. But when he steps up at the elite level, there's just something missing there. So expect Irizlandi Lara to win a decision here. All three of these fighters, I guess, will have titles in that division. Would sure be nice to see some unification there, right? Everyone keeps talking about Irizlandi Lara. You know, Golovkin needs to fight him. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Some of that talk has died down recently, but for all you guys talking about all that bullshit, let's see some unification with these three guys who are going to hold titles. Obviously, the Charlo brothers are going to get decisions, and so will Lara. The only other fight I know of, it's a different Vegas card, a Russian middleweight prospect, Arif Magomedov, 17-0, 10 knockouts. He's fighting. Be interesting to see what he does. So you see there's a lot of boxing going on this weekend. No real big high-profile fight. The big high-profile fight that was supposed to happen was canceled. But let me know what you guys think about this situation. Look, as far as I see it, I totally understand why that fight was canceled. And it's all on Povetkin. And again, if he's innocent, look, I know the drug it's not a steroid. It's not an anabolic steroid, but it's a banned substance. He tested positive for it. Bottom line, if you feel you're innocent and the test was wrong, demand the B sample be tested. Demand another test. Do something. Take action. Other fighters like Francisco Vargas, like Lucas Brown, guys who have popped for clenbuterol recently, they cried out very, very quickly. I didn't do anything wrong. I want my B sample tested. I want to be tested again, blah, 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 blah. They immediately took action. Povetkin's not doing that. It just looks really, really shady, given all the other stuff I talked about. But I want to hear your guys' opinion on this, because there does seem to be a lot of controversy among boxing fans about this fight being canceled. Do you guys think it's ever going to happen? I don't. I think Wilder will go on and fight somebody else later this year. I can't help but feel bad for Wilder, man. He went over to England to prepare. He was training over there. He spent a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of blood, sweat, and tears getting ready for this fight. He was looking at a $4.5 million payday, $1 million payday guaranteed. And I think the winner was going to get like another $500,000, $750,000, something like that. So a potential $5 million payday, life-changing money, career-high payday, down the drain. That sucks. And if you think Deontay Wilder wanted to pull out of this fight, think again. He had 5 million reasons to go over there. His team in the WBC, that's who canceled this fight. Either way, guys, like, share, subscribe. You know the deal. I'll see you guys at the fights.